You're listening to Frank Talks Pleasures and Lifestyles, and I'm Frank because I have to be. In studio, we have Mr. David J., who's talking to us today about asexuality. Welcome back to studio, David.
It's a great interview. Thanks for inviting me.
Oh, I'm having a great time with this. Very educational. Let's go right into it. In our last segment, we were talking about, you had alluded to some relationship structures. And I'd like to talk about being asexual and getting into monogamous relationships, being asexual and getting into polyamorous relationships. What structure is more beneficial and why?
Well, there's no one structure that everyone in the community is using. It's all over the map. There are asexual people who are extremely polyamorous and think about their industry that way. There are other asexual people who are entirely monogamous. So it's difficult to say. One of the big trends, though, that I've seen is that a lot of people question for themselves in terms of how they structure their relationships the distinction between relationships that are sexual and relationships that aren't. So the idea that you have friends who are in one category and partners who are in another category, or a partner who's in another category, is something that a lot of people kind of trace back to the idea that you're having sex with some people and not having sex with other people. And that's an idea that a lot of people question and take issue with. And so people will think about, all right, rather than saying that I have a partner and friends, or I have a couple of partners and friends, I'm just going to say that I have relationships. And I'm going to, in some way, think about all my relationships as involving the same things, even if some of them are extremely casual and some of them, have an intense level of commitment.
I'd like to take this into a slightly different direction because we are running out of time, and I've got so many more questions I want to ask you. Can I add a personal question for you? Have you ever tried to masturbate, or have you ever had an orgasm? And
yeah.
So you've tried that?
Oh, yes.
Was it pleasurable at all for you?
Yes, it was. And I know that can seem really contradictory to I guess, to the idea of asexuality. But two important things to realize, to think about, at least the way that I think about that. First of all, whether or not I masturbate doesn't really have an impact on my life. Whether or not I form sexual relationships does. So there are some people in the asexual community who masturbate. There's some people in the asexual community who don't. But we're basically stuck thinking about the same things. We have the same kind of issues to struggle with, and we have the same conversations about them, and so we have the same identity that we use to communicate and figure them out. And the way that if you like having sex with someone who's female, you won't necessarily like having sex with someone who's male. If you like masturbating, you won't necessarily like having sex with a partner. Is the way that I've experienced it, and that a lot of other asexual people have experienced it.
But the pleasure that you feel from, say, an orgasm, does that at all encourage you to masturbate more frequently?
A little bit, but not really.
Okay. Have you ever had a wet dream?
Not in my memory.
Okay. And I'd like to touch on, what does an asexual feel during sex? Because I'm assuming, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, there are some people who are asexual, may not even realize that they're asexual, who will engage into relationships and go through this sexual act, sexual motions, but not necessarily, well, you know what, I don't even know what it is they would feel. So what would an asexual person feel during the act of sex?
Well, and I get the sense that this is true of sexual people, too. It depends on why they're having sex. If they're having sex as a way to express intimacy with someone and show they love someone, even if that's not something that they're wired to feel aroused about, it could still be a powerful experience if it's communicating that emotion. If they're having sex because they feel like they've been pressured into it, then it will probably be an awful experience. The same way if a sexual person was having sex because they felt that they were pressured into it.
So an asexual person who's having sex will not feel sexual pleasure, but they might feel pleasure in expressing an emotion?
They might feel pleasure in another way. I know personally when I haven't had, as I said, I haven't had sex. When I was making out with people, when I've made out with people, it's not sexually pleasurable, but it's pleasurable because if I'm making out with them, I'm usually also hugging them, and I like hugging people.
Do you find that hugging in itself is a form of sexuality?
Not for me. I think for some people it can be related to sexuality.
Okay. And why don't we stop with this line of questioning, and we'll get back to it if we have time.
Okay.
I want you to tell me about your website. What's your website called? What kind of a resources it is? What people can find there? Give me everything you can about your website and why you started it up.
The website is located at asexuality.org. It's called the Asexual Visibility and Education Network, or AVEN. And right now it's the world's largest community of asexual people. It's where a lot of this stuff has been happening for the first time and getting talked about for the first time. And we have a variety of resources on asexuality. We have lists. We have what are called facts, frequently asked questions, kind of just breaking down what are the common experiences that asexual people feel in some depth. We also have a lot of articles on everything from what it's like to come out to sort of the growth of the asexual community. There's one on there called Confessions of an Asexual Slut that are different essays written on what it's like to be asexual by members of the community. And then there's the community itself. It's in 7 different languages. The English language community is the largest by far. We've got almost 7,000 members right now, actively discussing things every day. There's also a wiki, there's a store you can go to buy asexual t-shirts. I think they even have an asexual thong on there now. The entire website is maintained by a team of volunteers. We have no budget other than about $7 a month that I pay for internet hosting. So there's a couple of dozen volunteers all around the world that maintain the different online forums, maintain the website, generate content for it, do outreach and visibility work. We give workshops. We get in touch with different community centers and places that are talking about sexuality, encourage them to talk about asexuality. And we also do work like this, doing interviews with the press. Our mission is really twofold. The core of our mission is to increase open, honest dialogue about asexuality. And so the 2 ways that we do that are by building a community that's a safe space for anyone who's asexual or sexual or questioning to come and talk about these issues. And the other thing we do is we actively reach out to the rest of the world and try to increase the level of discussion about asexuality, and try to help inform people who are interested in it so they can talk about it in more depth.